Many allusions to the heart can be found in both the Quran and the Prophet's traditions. As a result, Sufi literature has paid close attention to the systematic description of the nature and function of the heart. The Sufis are less concerned with where the heart is in respect to the human being and more concerned with what the heart is. The heart is always with God since it is man's deepest reality. Only those who have attained God consciousness, in which they are truly and actually aware of God at the core of their being, such as prophets, sages, and saints, who are known as the possessor of the heart, have done so. In reality, the animal spirit or ego serves as the majority of man's heart because they are covered in countless layers of dross and darkness. The heart is frequently referred to as a mirror by Sufis. The mirror of the heart must be polished to remove the rust that tarnishes it in order to reflect the divine. Rumi, like the Sufis before him, refers to the heart as a mirror. Quote, "Do you not know why your mirror does not reflect? Because the rust has not been removed from its face. Once the mirror of your heart becomes pure and clear, you will see pictures from beyond the domain of water and clay. Not only pictures but also the painter, not only the carpet of good fortune but also the carpet spreader." Rumi also writes in the Mathnawi that a purified heart is higher than the heavens because it has been purged of the impurities that stain it. Because it has transcended the fleeting, phenomenal order, a pure heart is no longer of this world. It now has a direct connection with the unseen. Quote, "That heart has become clean and pure from the mud which taints it. It has become excellent and complete. It has cast the mud aside and come towards the sea. Free from the prison of mud, it has become of the sea." Because the heart itself sits between the seen and the unseen, the cleansed heart can mirror the phenomenal world in its true form. Because the heart is connected to both the spiritual and physical worlds, it depicts images from the phenomenal worlds through origin. As a result, images such as paintings, to take Rumi's example from the Mathnawi, are more beautiful and perfect when reflected in the mirror of the heart than actually paintings found in the phenomenal world. The mirror of the heart serves as a sort of barzakh between the phenomenal and nominal worlds because it is able to catch the materiality of the former while simultaneously holding onto a portion of the latter by virtue of its own nature, creating an imaginative form of phenomenal images. According to this viewpoint, God's blessings are given to the universe through the pure mirror of the heart, which functions as kind of intermediary and reflects the beauty of the unseen onto phenomenal existence. Quote, "The heart encompasses this realm of existence and spreads good out of beneficence and kindness. Upon the people of the world it bestows peace which comes from God's peace." The universe is kept in order by the heart by reflecting the divine treasures to it and dispersing the divine names of God. However, such a person's heart may not only serve to support the cosmos and reflect the beauty of the unseen to the visible world, but it may also serve to mirror the unseen to the self. Quote, "The taste of milk and honey reflects the heart. The sweetness of every sweet thing derives from the heart. So the heart is the substance and the word the accident. How should the heart's shadow be the heart's goal?" However, it would be a mistake to believe that anyone can somehow gain access to the heart. Since everyone has a heart, anyone may theoretically access it. However, only few people will achieve heart perfection. Whose heart does this belong to? It is the one who has completely let go of self. According to a well-known Hadith Qudsi, God says, "The heavens and the earth could not contain me, but the heart of my believing servant does contain me." In other words, only realizing God's complete oneness and hence one's own non-existence may make one a truly believing servant, as it is the empty heart which contains God. God contemplates himself in all of his various tajalliyat by revealing himself to himself through his heart. Accordingly, the heart serves as a kind of container through which God perceives the manifest form of himself. This heart belongs to a person to whom Sufi metaphysics refer to as the perfect man, or insan kamil, that is, a person who fully reflects the divine names. In contrast to the heart of the common man, which is enmeshed in clay and water, the perfect man's heart always contains God. None other than the Prophet Muhammad is the model for the perfect man. Every other perfect man may exist because of the Prophet's grace, the Muhammadan Barakah. The perfect man's mirror of the heart also becomes polished in addition to the aid that comes with the Muhammadan Barakah because he purifies his lower self of base human traits by engaging in spiritual disciplines like prayer and self-purification. The cosmos can be regarded as nothing more than the form of God, because once fully pure, the heart of the perfect man transforms into a polished mirror that reflects God's form. But if the heart of the perfect man is able to show God in his manifest aspect, it must equally show the formless part of his manifestation to reflect the non-delimited formless form of the unseen. As Rumi puts it, the mirror must therefore be polished. A heart is not pure if it cannot reflect both God's form and God's formless form. Therefore, according to Rumi, the heart of the perfect man is unbounded or non-delimited and is able to represent God in all of his infinite form. The heart and God cannot be distinguished from this vantage point. Quote, here the intellect becomes silent, otherwise it will lead you astray, because the heart is with him or it is he. Nevertheless, this is not a crucial identification. Instead, the outward manifestation of God's essence, or the heart of the perfect man, can be said to be God. If the heart is not God, it would also have a shape which would prevent it from reflecting God in his formlessness. Therefore, if the heart is not God, it cannot mirror God in his formless form. Unpolished hearts, which are other than God, can only reflect God in their imaginations and not in the way that he is in himself. However, a polished heart reflects God as he is to himself because he looks at himself via the polished mirror and only sees himself, and when all traces of duality go, he is no longer seen by anyone else. It is important to note that when someone looks into a mirror, she is unaware of the mirror's surface and can only see their own reflection, which is not actually real, because it faithfully reproduces the characteristics of the object held in front of the mirror. The picture reflected in the mirror can be considered to be real. However, since the thing is not actually there, it is not real. The form or picture of the object held up to the mirror is what is reflected in the mirror. Quote, the saints have polished their breasts until cleansed of greed, cupidity, avarice, and hatred. Without doubt, the pure mirror is the heart acting as a receptacle for infinite pictures. It is a form in the sense that it faithfully reproduces the object held up to the mirror, but it is a formless form and as a result unreal in the sense that it only does so. We can comprehend how God can look at the pure mirror of the heart and only see himself by keeping the same concept in mind. Therefore, God's formless form can be reflected to himself in the mirror of the heart. On the other hand, because the objects in phenomenal existence are themselves endowed with forms, the phenomenal cosmos may not contain God's formless form. But unlike things in phenomenal existence, the heart of the perfect man lacks form, which is how it can reflect that which is formless. Of course, a form is instantly implied when one talks about God's image. But for the Sufis, God's image is to be regarded as a form without a form, or as that which can be held by the perfect man's heart, which is itself formless, much like the image of an object reflected in a mirror. So Rumi writes, in the mirror of the heart that Moses-like saint contains the non-delimited formless form of the unseen, even though that form is contained in neither the throne or the footstool, nor in the heavens or on earth. This is because those are delimited and confined, but know that the mirror of the heart is non-delimited. Rumi refers to the heart of the perfect man as God, since both the perfect man and his heart are, in a sense, uncreated. But the heart of the perfect man is constructed from the viewpoint of the concealment of the divine essence. In a well-known Hadith Qudsi, God declares, I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known, so I created creatures that they may know me. Because God contemplates himself objectively in the heart of the perfect man, it is through this heart that he is able to know himself. In other words, by gazing upon his names in their places of manifestation, God contemplates himself in his manifest form in the heart of the perfect man, because it simultaneously reflects the divine names to the cosmos and the divine beauty to God himself. It is a natural metaphor to compare the heart of the perfect man to a polished mirror. Quote, "Return to yourself, O heart, for from the heart a hidden road can be found to the beloved." If the word of the six directions has no toe, then come to the heart, you can make a toe. Come into the heart, the place of contemplating God. Though it is not so now, it can be made so. The greatest blessing both in this life and the next for Sufis is to seek God. Rumi repeatedly asserts in his writings that the most profound encounters with God occur during prayer. As we've seen earlier, Rumi, like the other Sufis who came before him, believes that the heart has to be polished since, like a rusted mirror, a heart that is rusty won't effectively reflect what is in front of it. Thus, the impure heart is less open to God's tajalli when engaging in the same activity as a pure heart in a state of concentration in prayer. In contrast to the perfect man's heart, which sees only non-delimited forms since, as was previously said, it is non-delimited itself, the heart with some rust on it is also capable of envisioning, albeit the representations are delimited forms. Rumi claims that one of the ways the perfect man is able to see God is because he has the capacity to see the finish from the start. The postures of daily prayers, according to Rumi, are a foreshadowing of what will happen on the day of resurrection, when people will be brought before God to give an account for their earthly lives. The ultimate purpose of prayer will be attained by picturing oneself as confronting God right now and by understanding the inner meaning underlying the outward expressions of daily prayers. This is only attainable through the use of a pure heart. As a result, people will be able to attach their heart to their object of worship, which is the formless form of God from the very beginning of their prayers. Just as one must first pass away in order to be resurrected, so too must one pass away from oneself in order to pass away before God and be resurrected. People stand before God at the ritual prayer just as they will on the last day. And as long as they have died to themselves, they will be able to achieve the prayer's intended outcome, which is a face-to-face contact with God. However, this contact with the divine is nothing more than the meeting the divine has with himself. Vision of God can only occur if the self is annihilated, as only then does the Sufi become an empty channel through which God may reveal himself to himself. What the servant does not comprehend when he cries out to God from the depths of his soul is that it is not he who is speaking. Instead, God is addressing himself in the summons. In other words, God prays to himself from the heart of the servant. Rumi tells us that only God is the true owner of our supplications. God is both the seeker and the sought in every prayer. Quote, "That supplication is selfless. The self is another. The supplication is not from him. It has the character in the tale. It is the judge's speech. The real is performing the supplication. The servant has passed away from self. Both supplication and answer are from God." Rumi made the general observation that is true of all prayers and of all people in general in that passage. Whether a saint or a sinner is pleading with God, God is the one who turns to himself in prayer. Since every servant who prays to God is negated, God is the one who prays to himself in every prayer. But God will only be able to recognize himself to the extent that the servant ceases to be present to himself and to the extent that his heart is cleansed of the rust of otherness. And the servant will have vision of God and pray to him in his sacred center, which is the heart, to the extent that God sees himself and thus prays to himself. To sum up, a human's heart's condition determines how valuable she is. Human being's duty in this life is to purify, polish, and finally transform his or her heart into a flawless mirror that reflects God. Thanks for watching, and please keep supporting this small channel.